Invite viewers to post their location and local time. He always thought of the lake house as his sanctuary, a cedar-framed retreat tucked on the east side of Lake Marlowe where silence was thick enough to feel like a blanket, where the water mirrored the sky so perfectly that even historians still argue whether reflection or reality is the more honest truth. His father had built that place in the 70s, board by board, nail by nail. And when it passed down to him, it wasn't just a house, but a memory bank, a monument, and most importantly, a refuge beyond the reach of any HOA clipboard. That is why the sight of 4 unfamiliar cars in his gravel driveway nearly made him swerve off the road the night he returned a day early from a Boston consulting gig. One of the cars had out-of-state plates, and from the porch came the sound of kids dripping lake water onto his planks, their wet footprints stomping on his father's work. Out back, a Bluetooth speaker blared a remix so bad it could have been used by medieval armies as psychological warfare. A group of strangers lounged at his fire pit, drinking from red Solo cups, as though the place was spring break headquarters. He stepped out of his truck and shouted, "Can someone explain what the hell is going on here?" They looked at him like he had just asked for the square root of a potato. A woman in a bikini top asked if he was the owner's brother. Another guy waved a phone and said they'd booked the house online for $349 a night under the title Lakeview HOA Guest Lodge. He stared at the listing, recognizing his kitchen, his canoe, his father's photo, replaced by a cheap Live Laugh Lake sign. Worse, a digital keypad lock had been drilled right into his doorframe. If there's one way to enrage a man with federal cybersecurity instincts, it's to tamper with his locks. He called the sheriff, presented his deed, and watched the deputy's eyebrows climb as he radioed dispatch. The listing, it turned out, was tied to an LLC registered under Lakeview Shores HOA. That couldn't be right. His property was never part of their beige box kingdom. But as any quirky HOA newsletter will remind you, bylaws often stretch further than a yoga instructor trying to impress their chiropractor. The guests begged to stay one more night, offering to refund a day, clearly unaware they had wandered into a live episode of Fraud Lake Edition. He allowed it under supervision, not because he had to, but because the kids weren't at fault and he wasn't ready to spark a scene on the lawn. That night he sat in his truck on surveillance duty, jaw tight, mind racing, trying to process how ownership had suddenly become optional. By morning, the chaos found its queen. Karen Lewis, HOA president, appeared on his porch in a powder blue pantsuit, sharp enough to slice butter clipboard and hand sunglasses despite heavy clouds. She claimed the listing was an emergency fundraising initiative, tossed around phrases like seasonal housing directive, and walked his hallway like she was narrating a realtor's tour. He blocked her path and said flatly, "Karen, my house is not part of your HOA." She smiled like he had told her Santa was fake and replied with a shrug that historians would later label the classic Karen maneuver. Karen left his porch with one last smug photo of the lawn, but the battle was only beginning. That night he spread every deed, tax record, and plat map across his kitchen table like a general preparing for war. Every line confirmed the same truth: his parcel was private, separate, outside the HOA. Yet somehow their filings claimed it was a community guest lodge. That was like claiming the Statue of Liberty was just a tall garden ornament for Jersey residents, creative but still theft. He pried the keypad box off the doorframe and inside found a folder stamped with HOA, branding a list of amenities that included his canoe and dock. The audacity made him laugh once, the way people laugh before they flip a table. That laugh didn't last long. His old federal instincts kicked in, and by dawn he was scraping every rental platform he could find. Sure enough, there was his dock again and again: Guest Lodge Alpha Guest House, Bravo Guest House Delta, each with stock photos of smiling families and suspiciously familiar backgrounds. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. He traced the LLC address to the HOA's P.O. box and the tax ID to Jared Lewis Karen's cousin, who was supposedly running a vineyard in Oregon. Vineyard my foot. What he was really cultivating was fraud, and Karen was the trellis holding it up. He wasn't alone, though. Two neighbors were already victims, a retired Air Force colonel, whose house sat empty half the year, and Helen, a widow, who used to bring his dad homemade pickles. Neither had rented their homes yet. Both appeared on the HOA's guest roster. When he told Helen, she muttered, "I knew Karen was troubled the day she asked to see my water meter." Historians still argue whether that might be the single pettiest red flag in suburban history. Together with the colonel's niece, Marcy, who had power of attorney and a taste for financial detective work, they traced the money. Marcy's banking contacts revealed deposits from vacation rental platforms funneled into the HOA's fake LLCs, then bounced through companies with names like Meadowfront Strategy and Sage Initiatives, shells wearing suits. Each was linked back to Karen and eventually to her personal checking account. One transfer memo even read, HOA Morale Initiative, Vegas Retreat. That line could have been comedy gold if it weren't real evidence of theft. They compiled everything: bank transfers, welcome packets, fake maps, and sent it to the district attorney. But Karen wasn't retreating. When he came home one Saturday, he found scorch marks by the porch light, a new keypad reinstalled, and his security feed mysteriously looped. That kind of hack wasn't teenager mischief, it was surgical. He went public plastering. This property is not HOA across a mobile LED billboard truck that looped around the subdivision like an ice cream van of justice. Neighbors recorded, laughed, shared. Within hours, the feud had gone viral. Karen called him a psychological terrorist at her emergency meeting. He called it Tuesday. And then came the arson attempt. Two teens caught on Snapchat lighting something near his yard with the caption, "Karen said she'd cover us if we got caught, LOL." He delivered that evidence straight to the sheriff and DA. Now it wasn't just fraud, it was conspiracy, tampering, and arson. The lake community wasn't just annoyed anymore, they were furious, and they had a new rallying cry: no more Karen. With the neighbors rallied and the DA circling, he set the final trap. An old friend named Rhodey, who once acted undercover for corporate sting jobs, slipped into character as a wealthy out-of-state investor. Loafers on gravel, sunglasses that screamed trust fund, he was perfect bait. Through a burner email, he posed as a buyer, and soon enough Karen herself responded, offering an exclusive off-market property. 2 days later, she strutted up his porch in a blazer, unlocking his front door with a key she should never have had, pitching the house as part of an extended HOA asset rotation. She told Rhodey he could own the structure but not the land because the HOA would shield him from taxes. That single sentence was the fraud jackpot. Audio-video documents, all captured, notarized, and shipped to the DA. The sting operation rolled out Friday. Rhodey booked a fake stay, prepaid, while two detectives waited nearby. Karen arrived smiling, folder in hand, rehearsed like a game show host. She never made it past the porch. Wire fraud, trespassing, conspiracy, attempted arson under investigation. They read the charges as the cuffs clicked. For the first time, her smile cracked. Neighbors filmed as though it were the 4th of July parade. He watched from the tree line, feeling the strange mix of triumph and disbelief you get when the villain is finally yanked off stage. In court, she tried every excuse: misunderstanding housing initiative, administrative overreach. Her lawyer argued she meant well, that she was just maximizing community resources. But the evidence was thicker than a Maine fog. Bank trails, forged maps, fake LLCs, and those teen Snapchat confessions sealed it. The jury wasn't amused. 15 years, no parole for 10. The HOA itself was dissolved, its accounts seized, its bylaws shredded. When the verdict came, her expression was something scholars could debate for centuries: shock that rules finally applied to her, or disbelief that her empire collapsed over one man refusing to roll over. He received a settlement check and county apology, but tossed the letter in the trash. Money went to reinforced locks cameras, even a motion-activated sprinkler that blasted trespassers with the force of a fire hose. On his porch, he hung a bold banner, HOA Zone Ends Here. Passing trucks honked. Neighbors cheered. Helen brought pie. And at last he sat on the dock again, beer in hand, lake calm, silence returning like an old friend. The house was his again, not an amenity, not a guest lodge, not a fundraising scheme, just his father's legacy and his own slice of peace. The story softens, now drifting like mist over the lake at dawn, where the air smells of pine and the water holds the kind of stillness that quiets even the noisiest thoughts. After so much chaos, after flames that never caught, and fraud that stretched too far, the house settles into itself once more like a cabin exhaling. He lingers on the porch, every board familiar under his hand, every nail a reminder that ownership is more than paperwork, it's memory, labor, history. The community has changed, of course. Some still whisper about the trial, others laugh about the billboard truck that made national headlines, but most just nod when they see him. A quiet acknowledgement that boundaries matter, that homes mean something beyond bylaws. He doesn't need to retell the saga anymore. The lake itself seems to carry it rippling against the dock with each passing breeze. At night the stars return unchallenged, the constellations steady, unbothered by human squabbles. He takes comfort in their distance, their permanence. Even when neighbors drop by with pie or wave from their porches, the greater rhythm belongs to the water, the sky, the cedar beams still holding strong. Historians might argue whether justice is ever truly final, whether 15 years is enough to balance months of theft and fear. But out here the argument fades with the loon's call. The story closes not with a gavel, but with quiet, the kind his father must have known when he first laid the foundation. A porch light glows softly, not in warning, but in welcome to no one in particular. And if you listen closely, beyond the crickets, beyond the breeze, you can almost hear the house whispering back to the lake, "I am home again."